We're recording this so that everybody will have a chance to be able to see this later on, and just use some of the great information and resources that are there. I'm really excited for our panel. I'm excited for all of you and the work that you're up to. And just thinking about, my word that I said today was data, and that's because I've been doing a lot of digging in the data for the California DREAM Act application. I'm really lucky that the California Student Aid Commission is in partnership with Immigrants Rising and has allowed us to kind of do some digging and deep dives into the data. This is some preliminary results. We'll have more as we go, but I think it's important to just kind of set the context. In terms of, this is information that our colleague Victoria shared with us, that as of January 22nd of this year, only 11,118 students had applied for the California DREAM Act. And I'm comparing this to the research that was done by the New American Economy that actually said that in 2019, there were 92,000 students, undocumented students enrolled at California colleges and universities. Now, I know that that number might have gone down from the pandemic, but still just looking at that juxtaposition, it's a really big difference. So I'm really excited that you're here today so that we can collectively think about, in these last 3 weeks that we have, how can we push those numbers up to be much closer in the future. The other thing that is important to be thinking about is that when we look at the application trends over the years, applications have been actually going down. And even though I just showed you that slide about 92,000 students who were enrolled in colleges and universities in 2019, even in the 19-20 year, only 52,000 of those students actually applied. So like 40% of our enrolled students are not even applying for the California DREAM Act application. And then that number has gone down in 2021. And then if you actually take a look at what's happening with the pandemic, this report that came out from the Public Policy Institute of California showed that, okay, in 2020-21, which is the previous slide, numbers were down 4% for the California DREAM Act, only 2% for FAFSA in 21-22. They went down 3% for FAFSA, but down -16% for the California DREAM Act. So I think that's why data is something that's really kind of spurring me on more now. Data is not going to solve the situation, but I think it can help inform where are some of the roadblocks and what are some of the pathways forward to try to address some of those roadblocks. Also thinking about, like those are the numbers overall. I want to actually do a deeper dive by institution, especially looking at some of the differences between the 2-year colleges and the 4-year colleges. And this great little drawing was done by one of our colleagues, Maritza Quiroz. So if you look at the awards by public institution in 2019-2020, you can see that it's about a 56% award rate for the California community colleges of Cal Grants. These are Cal Grants that I'm going to be looking at right now in terms of awards by institution. I know that there are some Promise grants, CSU grants, UC grants. This doesn't even look at some of the private schools and what some of their awards are, but there are only 56%, only 9,000 students were actually awarded. And in the end, only 5,309 students actually got paid. CSUs, this is at around 6,400. UCs is around 3,600. And so these are important numbers to be thinking about, especially when we start to think about the 61,000 estimated students at the California Community College in 2019-2020. So 61,000 students enrolled, 5,000 getting a grant, which is an entitlement grant from by applying for the California DREAM Act and through the California Student Aid Commission. When we're looking at the CSU, which does have a much better award rate, 89% of awards were actually paid out. There's 10,000 to 12,000 undocumented students at the CSU. So there's still a really big gap in terms of the number of students that are not as big as the community college, but still a pretty big award gap between students who are attending the CSU and actually receiving a Cal grant. And then looking at that from the UCs are doing pretty good, right? There's a 93% award rate overall in terms of the number of people that are actually awarded and then paid the Cal grant. And they're actually getting almost up to their 4,000 students, and have said actually that they're able to back feedback sort of fill some of that aid if you don't get a Cal grant is their UC institutional aid. But I'm just thinking about, like this concern of the gap. And when I'm talking about awarded, that means that the student is actually gets notice from the California Student Aid Commission that they were awarded a Cal grant. And in that, some of them are paid, so the money actually goes out the door and is paid to the student. Some of them are not paid, and that means that the school received the award, but actually found a reason that the student couldn't get the award, like maybe their income was over guidelines, or maybe they didn't have the right number of units, or maybe they have satisfactory academic progress. Or a big thing that we see is maybe they didn't have their affidavit on file so that the award never went out the door. So just thinking about this is too many students without awards, and then contrasting the estimated students versus the awards. I also just wanted to take a peek at sort of how are those awards at public institutions rolling out. So there's a number on the bottom you can see is the number of awards that were given. So 8 community colleges didn't give out any Cal grants or pay any Cal grants. And this, and then like it goes from like, like let's see, this is 41 students, 41 community colleges gave out between 10 and 24 grants. You can see also the big difference between the CSUs and then looking at the UCs, right? Like this is 1-0 at the UCs is actually UCSF, which is a graduate institution and doesn't award Cal grants because that's just for undergraduates. I saw a question come up in the chat in terms of, is this data for all undocumented students enrolled at the institutions or just AB 540 eligible students? Important question. In order to be able to receive the Cal grants or any kind of state-based financial aid, they do need to be AB 540 eligible. So I think this, and even the previous number, this is an estimate. My understanding that this, the numbers that the CSU uses and the UC and TCC is based on the fact of students who are AB 540 students. So a really important question, a really important point that you raised, Cindy, in terms of there's actually many more students who are not AB 540 eligible who are not receiving this aid as well. The thing I wanted to do also then is just kind of take a look at in the 2021, so kind of coming up to the most recent year that we have data for. This is actually showing where are those awards. And again, you can see it goes, from up to around 700 that were awarded quickly down. Shout out to CSU Los Angeles, who's here in the house today, because they have consistently been one of the top awarding schools. And when we actually look into the data, which I'm going to share with you right now, and more of to be able to look at it a little bit more by system and not system. If we just take a look at all schools, this is showing us CSU Northridge paid out 752 schools, CSU LA 747, like UC Santa Cruz 239, and then quickly down, like to 77 degrees, 77 awards, 57 awards. If you start to pull it out, this is just all awards, right? So the red is the amount of the award that they were actually paid out. If you see large blue or orange numbers, that means that there are actually many more students were awarded. Actually more students in East Los Angeles actually didn't get paid than actually got paid. So we're looking at their paid rates as well as some of their award rates overall. So if I pull this out and I just take a look at some of the different systems, if I look at the community colleges, in terms of who's the most awards, I actually just want to take a quick peek now at paid award rates. So community colleges, looking at their paid award rates, you can see that Fresno College, Bakersfield College, Santa Monica College, right? Cerritos College and Mount San Antonio are up in the top in terms of the number of Cal grants that were actually awarded. If we take a peek at those that are for the CSUs, we can take a peek at that and then just take a quick idea in terms of, at the UCs. There's even a really big difference from UC Merced, 544, all the way down to UC Santa Cruz. So we don't know the numbers of undocumented students at each school, but I do think that it's really important for us to be thinking about, I'm very struck by the difference in awards. So looking at CSU Northridge, and CSULA, top awarders, but going all the way down to Humboldt, 33, and then Maritime having 2, right? So there's a big difference between those pieces. And I think that while data is not going to provide all the information that we need, I do think it's really important for us to be thinking about what's coming up with these differences. So what's kind of making for some of these differences? So I do want to, before I share the next slide, I did want to actually just take a peek at what were some of the responses that people were talking about in terms of the strategies that they use to support undocumented students at their school. So this is great to see in terms of intentional outreach with the help of reports. That's so important, right? To be able to have those reports, to be able to say, okay, this student is enrolled and they have their DREAM Act, but they don't have the affidavit on file, or vice versa. You know, like meeting one-on-one, doing workshops, ensuring that all outreach materials include both information about the FAFSA and BCADA. I think this one, be prompt and committed, so important as well, right? Because sometimes we hear from students that they're just waiting to be able to get their information, or that they call and can't get in touch with people easily. I think also really important thinking about the scheduling one-on-ones, you know, student level or school level data. So this is really important, right? Like we're taking a broader look at the overall system, but what is your school data? How can you find out about how you could, like, are there lots of awards that are not paid? Are there lots of, how are you on the spectrum of where things are being paid? Also thinking about consistent announcements and workshops, providing incentives, telling students about the entire process, right? Like we need to do everything that we can to get students to submit, like Rosa said. But at the same time, there's many steps behind that towards actually being able to receive your award. And then looking at that, listening, showing support, and uncommon good, we empower our dreamers by bringing them into the conversation and creating safe environments, making friends with financial aid, right? If you're in financial aid, we want to be your friend because financial aid is so key. Every department is key, but we want to make sure we have a friend in financial aid so that we can get the inside information or help them address some of the strategies that we're going to be talking about today. So congrats to everybody for all these ideas, bringing opportunities, making friends. We'll be sharing this with you as well so that you can kind of just see, you know, like get a sense of what other schools are doing. And they actually, I like this one, having a financial aid advisor coming to our center on Tuesdays and Thursdays to support students with their application. So not just making sure that students have to go to the financial aid office, but that there's other ways that you can stay connected with them and build trust. We also, just in terms of partnering with financial aid, we have some promising practices for financial aid counselors. Malin's going to throw that in the chat. In a quick nutshell, it's like there's some levels for getting started in terms of always saying FAFSA or DREAM, including CADA and all materials. Highlighting data protection is really important, and supporting mixed status families. Those are kind of sort of the beginning steps. And then if you kind of got those down already, then we really hope that you're able to think about, we hope that you're able to think about how you could take it to the next level. Is there a point person for undocumented students? Do you encourage departmental trainings? You know, how is there collaboration with departments, and what kind of support is there for U visas and students with TPS? So Liliana is asking, what can be some challenges obtaining data of number of undocumented students in different institutions? Is this something that's being tracked? My understanding is that the schools do have some of that information, but both for data protection reasons, as well as for some others that I don't completely understand, they're not talking about that data, even at a very high level in terms of number of applications or number of awards or number of like milestone data for those students. So I think that those challenges are different at different campuses, but important to be thinking about how we can work together with our institutional research, with our financial aid and queries. And you'll be hearing from our panel about some of the strategies that they use to try to strengthen that. And I just want to highlight as we transition into the panel that these are some of the schools that have actually really high award rates. So I'm so excited that they're able to be with us today. And before I switch over, I just did want to remind everybody, somebody talked about being safe. I did just want to remind people today that the California Student Aid Commission did update their letter. It's a co-branded letter between the California Student Aid Commission as well as the state superintendent of the California Department of Education. Madeline can throw that link in the chat, but this actually says that they will work to the fullest extent of the law to protect all students that share their information through the California DREAM Act. So shout out to CSAC for that work. And how can we make sure that not only that we know that they're going to protect it, but that our students know they're going to protect it before they ever set campus on our school. I'll share it over to Madeline now as we're getting ready to do the panel. Thank you, Madeline.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nancy. So we do hope that some of the data and the promising practices resources that Nancy said, folks will start to also think about. It's really the individual efforts, I think, are really helpful in helping address some of these like gaps that Nancy talked about, right? But how do we actually like build more departmental collaborations? How do we build more collaborations with organizations outside of our campuses to reach more of those students? Because clearly there is also still a lot of work to be done. And so I'm going to introduce our panelists for today, or actually their names are on here, and I will ask each of them to introduce themselves more deeply when it's their turn to speak. But each of our panelists will be talking about just how they've built some of those departmental collaborations within their campus to increase their award rates for financial aid for undocumented students. And we also have Victoria from CSAC, who will talk about some of the tools that can help schools increase their application and award rates, and maybe share some of the collaborations that they've seen statewide that works really well. So we're actually going to start off with Carmen from Mount SAC to go first, and then we'll transition to the other two folks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carmen. I am an adjunct counselor at the DREAM program at Mount San Antonio College. It is a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'm briefly gonna discuss, just intro or jump into my bullet points as well?
Yes, you can jump in, yes.
Okay. So I'm briefly gonna just share some tips in regards to how the DREAM program collaborates with other departments to maximize the financial aid awards for our students. And as I try to organize the information, I was really trying to think, how do I simplify this, right? And I think there's kind of 3 stages to the way that we provide support. Within our first stage, I like to think about it as onboarding. And during onboarding, some of the things that we do is we actually try to keep track of our AB 540 eligible students who at the moment do not qualify for AB 540. So these might be students that do not have the 3 years of high school requirements or do not have a high school diploma. So we actually collaborate with our adult basic education to do a special admin program and kind of help them meet the requirements for AB 540. As we help more students meet the requirements for AB 540, we then increase the number of students that can actually apply for the California DREAM Act. So I think in regards to onboarding, it's important to keep in mind that not all students automatically qualify just because of the different criteria. For the students that do not qualify for AB 540, we support them in 2 ways. One of them is the DREAM program actually provides funding to cover non-resident tuition on a case-by-case basis for our students so that they can start taking college credit courses. So they do receive institutional support to cover their tuition. For our students that do not have a high school diploma, we actually collaborate with our adult education through a special admin program. And again, we help them enroll into a GED program, and then at the same time, they can take credit courses. Then the second part that I like to see in terms of maximizing the award will be for our students that are currently enrolled at Mount SAC. And for the students that are enrolled at Mount SAC, it is important, kind of like Nancy mentioned, right? Data, and collaborations. We actually do run a report to identify students that are in our DREAM program at Mount SAC who have not completed the financial aid application, but we know they are eligible to apply because they have an AB 540 on file. So when we identify those students, we can have our staff members reach out to them, schedule appointments with our financial aid specialist, and just kind of really assess, hey, why haven't you submitted your California DREAM Act? Let's provide you more one-on-one support. In addition to that, we also collaborate with the Office of Financial Aid, and the Office of Financial Aid will run reports to identify students who submitted their California DREAM Act, but have pending verification documents. So these are students that have to submit an IRS tax transcript or supplemental documentation that for whatever reason, they didn't have the ability to submit. We also reach out to those students and do a lot of the things that you all mentioned, right? We reassure them that their information is confidential. We also provide assistance in terms of how do I actually access these IRS tax transcripts, and what does it look like if my parents are also undocumented. So there are some complex conversations that need to happen, but again, they are very intentional and reassuring them that if they do this, it is safe and it is also to their benefit. And then the third category in terms of maximizing the award would be this idea of kind of like persistence or retention. And these are for our students that are already receiving California DREAM Act, but might be in satisfactory academic probation, meaning that their GPA has decreased or they have too many units and they are at risk of losing their financial aid. So our financial aid would also run a report for those students. We contact them, and then our DREAM program counselors, we meet with our students, we check in with them, try to provide strategies in terms of how to get out of academic probation, or if they have over the units, how to either transfer to graduate. And most importantly, help them write and submit their financial aid appeal so that they don't lose their financial aid. So in regards to these three stages, I do want to kind of highlight our key collaborators because we don't do this alone. We do have our DREAM program that has a full-time counselor, 2 adjunct counselors, an educational advisor. We also have paid peer mentors who themselves are currently students at Mount SACT. We have a financial aid specialist that works directly with the DREAM program. So as I am meeting with students, it is very easy for me to tell them, hey, have you done your DREAM Act? If not, let me schedule an appointment for you, like right here, right now, right? I don't have to refer them to anyone else. And then again, we collaborate with our adult education and our ESL programs for our students that are non-traditional AB 540 students that can become eligible and eventually receive the support that they need. So I know it was a handful of information, but I try to condense it as much as possible, and I'll be here to answer questions later on. Thank you for the invite.
Great. Thank you so much, Carmen. So yeah, again, just like the importance, right, of data and collaborations. I won't have you answer right now, but I do want you to we'll come back to you again, right, and kind of think about, and I do want you to also share how you kind of maybe built these collaborations over time, because a lot of folks, they may be the only person working in their campus supporting undocumented students, right, or they don't have a relationship yet with financial aid. So how do we kind of build that? If that does not exist yet, or how do we re-strengthen that if that kind of has like fallen through? But before you answer that, I will transition us over to Jamie Quiroz from the financial aid department to hear the financial aid side of the work that they do at Cerritos College.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Quiroz, and I am the Financial Aid Assistant Director. I have worked in financial aid for 26 years now. And so all in financial aid, I started out doing scholarships and Cal grants. And during that time, we didn't have AB 540. So I did try to help as many students as possible with scholarships that they might qualify for. And so I definitely seen the need. And as you know, AB 540 passed and got expanded with 2068, you know, students didn't actually get Cal grants until 13-14. So it's been about, a little over 10 years now that students are actually benefiting from cash money, not just the help with the lower tuition. So it's been great to see the progress there. We've seen a big need here at Cerritos during that time, and we out of financial aid and counseling, we had certain people that seeing that students just didn't know about it. Yes, the law passed, and yes, it was available, but they didn't really know that it existed. So then that's when we formed a task force, undocumented ally task force. And so we've had that task force doing lots of work, labor of love over the last, I would say like 7 years. And so we did finally get a full-time position about a year ago. And we got an equity center that includes our Dream Resource Center. And so that has been great. Some of the things I wanted to share with you guys on best practices that we've used at our college. We've talked about a lot of it, and I even wrote down some tips from Carmen, some things that, I can incorporate as well. But publications is really important, website, social media, and just using like the language that we use. I know Nancy mentioned how you always want to use things interchangeably, right? And so every time we do throw out the FAFSA, we throw out the CADA, but we also created different publications because some of the steps in the financial aid process are different. And so we wanted to make sure that we do that. And of course, we go out to high schools. And so we're trying to focus on outreach with these publications. And so as we go through and are informing students and educating them, we're making sure that we're always addressing our dreamers, our DREAM Act application in any of those conversations. So we've also done things like, Zoom backgrounds where we're advertising it. And so that way, when any of our staff are in meetings or meeting with students, they'll also see the Zoom background. So I think just being creative about, your website and how things are worded. For example, on the financial aid website, we, under our, how do I apply? We break it down for both, we go into both, and that way it's kind of clear. We also have a direct link to our Undocu website, our Dream Act AB 540 website, and this is our Undocu Scholars Program. And so financial aid actually created this website. So, because we didn't have anybody, right? So we knew that the information needed to be out there, and this was just one of the things that we did. But, during this process, we go through the steps that are important for students to get that Cal Grant. And so when we think in terms of outreach, some of the things that we've done is not only do we go out to the high schools, but we also are educating our counselors in our nearby high schools. So we had an Undocu Ally training on campus for staff, faculty, management, and students, but we also did a high school educator ally training. And so that I think was very effective, because I think sometimes, we spread the word around here, but then those students that are coming up in their junior year to senior year, sometimes they don't know about it right away. So the more you can put that information out there with your high school counselors, principals, teachers, I think it just kind of spreads the word. And there's not a whole lot of training out there for them. I know CSAC is good about communicating with the high school counselors, and they have webinars and trainings and stuff like that. But I think some of the other nitty-gritty details that students need to know at the coming from high school to college, I think that's important to teach them how to navigate that. And so we do a lot of outreach, and it's challenging. I won't say that it's not challenging. Sometimes we how do we find the students that we need to reach? It's not always easy, but we have collaborated with our migrant education programs in some of our nearby school districts. That's been helpful. English learner groups and stuff like that. So, and then collaboration, I know Carmen mentioned, they're doing a great job at collaborating. That is so important. I think we also have a financial aid specialist that works directly with our Undocu Scholars Program. We also collaborate closely with our counseling, our Undocu counselor, and then also with ASCC. They played a big part in helping us. We apply for funding, extra scholarship money from ASCC for Undocu students, and they've been helping us with that. We've also done fundraisers across campus to increase our scholarship funds as well. That's been a good collaboration. And then, Cerritos Complete, our Promise program, we're also running queries with them to identify students that maybe haven't done their AB 540 form. And so that kind of pulls me into the data and queries that was mentioned. So critical. We run a lot of queries, and one of them, the one that I do run, is potential AB 540 students. So because we don't really know if they're undocumented, if they, if they qualify for AB 540 or not. And so we run a query that looks at, in our system, it's coded as a foreign resident, and that's how it comes across on the admissions app and how admissions codes them. So we look at those students for potentially being AB 540. We exclude international, and then we pull in, did they do an AB 540 form, tuition exemption form? Did they do a California Dream Act? Do they have a fee waiver, a CCPG fee waiver? And so if any of those are no's, we reach out to that student. And so either financial aid will reach out, or now that we have an Undocu Scholars program, we have them to reach out. And so I think that's important, because you find the ones that slip through the cracks. Maybe they didn't hear about it from their counselor in high school. Maybe they didn't hear about it when they transitioned to Cerritos, but we're going to catch them somehow. So that's how we find those. And then we have another query that helps us with fall to spring retention. So we'll see, okay, let me run this query of all AB 540 students or potential students that were enrolled for fall, and did they enroll for spring? If not, we're reaching out to them, to see how we can help them enroll and stuff like that. So I think, there's been a lot of collaborations around campus, but data is so important, because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't know who slipped through the cracks. So I think we've worked hard, but I know we can still do better. So I'm hoping to also get some best practices from all of you guys so that we can keep improving as well. I really think that having a task force has been critical on our campus, because we didn't have that position. And so without the on the task force, we had counseling, EOPS, we had faculty, we had management. So we had just a really cross group of people that cared and that would work hard to try to spread the word and create awareness and make our campus welcoming for our undocumented students, whether they're AB 540 or not. So I think that's about it that I have. I look forward to more discussion and questions later.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. Yeah, I think just a lot of echoes with Carmen's points, right, around collaboration, data, making sure that you're also catching students, even if they have been missed before, and informing them about the California Dream Act. I really also like the point you made around feeder school outreach, and even also having like a task force, because it was recently, I think, that you all had an official undocumented student serving person. But even if you don't have that, how can some of these other existing departments on campus do the work in informing and supporting those students cross campus wide? So thank you for sharing some of that. And then I'll transition us to our last panelist speaker, Victoria, to share just some of the tools that CSAC has around monitoring application and award rates.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Victoria Vixney, and I'm one of the trainers at California Student Aid Commission. Thank you so much for having me here, and it's been great. I've already been learning some really good tips and best practices. So there's always more to learn, right? So I put together just a few slides. I'm kind of going to go over a little bit more of the technical part of how to use our system. So if you're familiar at all with web grants, so let me. I'm in the office today, so my setup is a little different. Can you all see my PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Yes, we can see all the slides, but we can see it.
Let me go full screen. Okay. So I'm not quite sure. I think it sounds like a lot of you are from college campuses and financial aid offices specifically. So if you do have access to web grants, I'm just going to walk through, maybe you're aware of this feature or maybe not. So I want to show you how to customize your roster really quick. We do offer a full hour-long webinar on this topic. So a standalone webinar. We also are going to be starting up our regional trainings again. So if maybe you're a new financial aid administrator or just want to learn more about the web grant system, definitely sign up for one of those. But I did just grab a few screenshots to kind of walk through quickly on this event today. So with your roster, that's showing all your Cal Grant eligible students, right? And that's where you'll be checking on payments, administering payments, doing any adjustments. But the really cool part is that you can customize it so that you just see a particular subset of your students. So to do that, you will log into Web Grants and then click on roster/reconciliation under the Cal Grant section. When the little menu pops up, you'll click Customize Roster and then go down here. This snipping was a little bit longer. So you'll probably, if you've never customized a roster before, you'll just see the CSAC standard roster. So then you'll want to click the little pen and paper icon. And then you can title your roster. So I just put CADA. You want to make sure that you do change it to no, so click that radio button because you don't want to override your standard roster, and then click save. So now you'll have the option to do basically select which students you're wanting to look at on this new roster. If you scroll down, first you're going to see a couple boxes that you don't need to touch for this particular if you just are wanting to look at Dream App students. And then scroll down and you'll see Dream App flag. And then you want to click the radio button for Dream App student. At that point, you'll scroll all the way down, click save again. And then when you go back to look at your roster, so you'll click roster reconciliation again, click display roster. When you do the drop down, you'll be able to see your new CADA roster there. And so then when you click search, it will only pull up students that are submitting a DREAM Act application. And they are on your Cal Grant roster. So then this is a way to be able to easily look at it and see which students still need to be paid, which students have already been paid. And then this can also be a good tool for you to do some outreach for the following years. So if you want to grab these students and send out, outreach emails or text messages and make sure that they are renewing for the following year, this can be a good opportunity to use this tool. And yeah, you can maybe share this data with your Dreamer Resource Center, whatever collaborations you have. It's just a really good way to not have to go looking through potentially thousands of your students on your normal Cal Grant roster, and it puts it all in one place for your Dream Act applicants. Again, there's just Cal Grant, so it's not necessarily pulling in any middle class scholarship students, and unfortunately, it's not pulling in any students who haven't been awarded yet. But still a good way to at least get a baseline of outreach for your students. And then I want to just point out that, oh, and then at the bottom of the slide, we do have a link to our trainings. So if you are interested in signing up for any of our other trainings, then you can, when you get these slides, you can click on that link. I'll share these slides with Nancy and Madeline so they can get sent out. And then some statewide collaborations. Our two other panelists have already mentioned what they're doing on their campus, so really great job there. I love to hear that. But also we always promote Immigrants Rising. So whenever we're talking to other schools and they're having questions and needing resources, we love partnering with Immigrants Rising. So it's great that you all are here on this webinar. And then also our CalSOAP and regional coordinating organizations. I'm not sure if colleges have collaborated as much. I know our high schools will tend to collaborate with our CalSOAPs and our RCOs, but they are regional. They are in your communities. There's not one for every community, unfortunately, but there's 16 CalSOAPs and then several RCOs throughout each county. So if you are interested in getting in contact with them, they typically are working with the local high schools. So that could be a good way to strengthen a partnership with your high schools. And then, as we've already heard, the Dreamer Resource Centers and Financial Aid Office partnerships. I used to work at the Sac State Financial Aid Office, and we were just kind of starting out with that collaboration and that partnership. I think it's at this point, hopefully a lot stronger now. So that was a really good way to be meeting students where they are and where they feel comfortable at the Dreamer Resource Center, and ensuring that the staff there have the tools and resources they need for financial aid purpose. And then also partnering with us. So we love to support different events. We want to be there if you are having a webinar, or we'll even try to be in person. My colleague John was just at Fresno for their Dreamer conference a couple weeks ago. And we're also offering office hours. So if you are helping a student and you have a specific question, you can join one of our office hours, just drop in, and one of us will be there to answer your questions. And then we have a brand new webinar. We just put together our line by line for our DREAM Act application. We know that's been highly requested, and we were just going to record it and kind of push it out onto our YouTube channel, but we realized we should offer it as a live webinar. And then we'll record that version and also have it, make it available on YouTube. So I'll get these slides over to Nancy and Madeline so that they can email them out to you all, and you'll have those direct links to register.
Yeah, thank you so much, Victoria, for sharing a lot of these too, right? And as Victoria mentioned, the tool that she showed is only available for financial aid staff, but I think that kind of just reiterates the point of the collaborations across different, like not even just across the campus, but across organizations and campuses, because we do know that we have a lot of community organizations here on the call right now who may have more reach with undocumented students that our campuses may be missing, right? So how can we kind of like collaborate and put some more of those efforts together so all our students are being informed as much as possible through the whole process of applying for the California DREAM Act. So thank you, Victoria, for sharing that with us too. And so I know there was a lot of different practices, a lot of different tools shared. We do want to give folks a chance to kind of like reflect, to kind of think about, oh, I'm doing something similar on my campus, or I'm building something similar on my campus or my organization. And so we are going to transition into breakout rooms in a second, but I do want to maybe just give our two panelists, Carmen and Jamie, just like one final question around kind of like what advice do you have for campuses for building something similar on your campus that you shared about if they're just starting out, right? And then after that, maybe we'll transition into a breakout room. So I'll actually call on Carmen first and then Jamie.
I'm definitely very blessed to come into a space that was already established. But as we think about college campuses that are just starting to develop equitable services to undocumented students, I think that your first step is to identify your key institutional agents or key allies. Because most likely at your college campus, there's already somebody that's helping undocumented students, right? And if you don't know who it is, ask an undocumented student and they will point you to that direction of that person, because the students will find them, right? Our students they're very alert and it's great. But the goal is to find those institutional agents and bring them together. It's really creating those task forces and trying to align all of your knowledge that you have in your field and collaborate to expand the access for students. So task force are key, and then definitely taking advantage of community organizations like Immigrants Rising, or even within your educational system, other campuses that already have established center. We are always happy to share resources and information and best practices so that more students are served across California, right? So those are some of my smaller tips.
Thank you, Carmen. Yeah, Jamie, would you like to share?
Sure. I think the collaboration piece, just to add on a few other things I remembered, and I think they're important, is your collaboration with your Dream Club. I think it's important whether you serve as an advisor or we had a really strong Dream Club at one point, and then it kind of fizzled down, and then we're building it back up again. And so that's critical, because word of mouth, I think, really gets around what the resources are. And so, you know, and whether it's word of mouth with other students, or it's maybe younger siblings or cousins, or, you know, the word spreads when you have a close relationship and they know they can come to you for things. Also, I think it's important to celebrate our students as well. So one thing that we incorporated was like an undocumented celebration. And so I think that also showed them how much we care. And then like, you know, their younger siblings seen that as well, and their parents, and then the word spreads as well. So I think just letting students know that we care, that we're here for them, that it's a safe place, and then having knowledge of where they can transfer to from our community college, and connecting with those university dream centers and dream counselors and stuff like that. So that collaboration piece is such a broad web of allies, that it's just really important that students know about that.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing that too. So I think with that, we also know that there's a lot more like best practices or other lessons learned that folks have in the room. So we do want to give folks a chance to like connect a little bit more with each other and share what some of those are. If you have some questions or challenges coming up, feel free to share some of that in your breakout rooms. We do have these guiding questions for you all when we jump into our breakout groups around if you do have a team in your campus or in your region who is part of your team to maximize access to the California Dream Act officially or not officially, right? What strategies and resources do you use to make sure undocumented students are receiving that financial aid that they're applying for? And what did you hear from today that you can take back to support your team, your campus, or your organization? So is there any questions or anything like that before we jump into our breakout rooms? We're going to be in there for about, I think we have time for about 10 minutes. And yeah, if so, I see no questions or anything like that. Nancy will go ahead and open that and hope folks are able to connect with each other. Up with the we forgot to hit that back. We just want to wrap up with a couple of final evaluation and announcements for folks. We do want to hear how this training was helpful to you all. So we have this another final quick Mentimeter, a quick poll of Mentimeter. Nancy will throw that same code back in the chat. If you could just go ahead and go back to menti.com and use that code and just let us know if you agree with these following statements. And if there are things that you also want to that we maybe didn't cover today, but would be helpful, we will probably reach back out to folks to kind of see what will best support you in your work moving forward around getting those Dream Act award and application numbers up. As a reminder, we do these virtual promising practices roundtable every month for the spring semester. We're doing it the second Thursdays of every month from 9:30 to 11 a.m. Next month, we're going to be talking about how to effectively reach undocumented students virtually. Now that we've kind of lived in this post-pandemic world, where online outreach and online information sharing is a lot more common. We want to make sure that folks' websites, social media, other online interactions are helpful and informative to undocumented students. So we'll be talking about that. Make sure to invite your outreach and counseling colleagues. This also will probably be relevant to folks who are working in community-based organizations to make sure that your websites are up to date and serving undocumented students well. Just some final resources that we have. We do have a toolkit for the California Dream Act with some sample graphics, social media posts, emails, and texts, all those different ways that we reach students. So please check out this toolkit and use some of our graphics in your social media, websites, or other ways that you reach out to students. We still have those final 3 weeks, right? And then if your students are looking for one-on-one support in the last minute before the March 2nd deadline, we are hosting California Dream Act drives, virtual drives for students directly happening 4 to 6 p.m. on these following dates. So if there's some last minute filers that you have that need support, that have specific questions, you can direct them to these drives. We'll be sharing a lot of these links to folks who registered, so feel free if you're not able to get all of them right now. And then just lastly, we do also have a higher education digest that I put together, a little newsletter of our different events, resources, other news, highlights, support relating to the undocumented community. And you would email me to be added to that listserv. I think you might have been asked if you want to sign up for that when you registered for this Zoom. And if you're not getting that, but you've signed up, make sure that you have me as your contact in order to receive this digest. And then just finally, here is our contact information for all of our panelists today. Feel free to connect with them after. There's a lot of great practices that was shared with you all today. And we do hope that we see you next month and that we are getting those California DREAM Act numbers up. So next year, the gap will be a little bit smaller, right? Thank you all for coming through today, and we hope to see you next month. And please reach out to us or to any of our panelists for any support that you may need. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Carmen. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks to all the panelists.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. I just share.